Good morning, everyone. I know I'm fully conscious I'm the last guy in between you and the networking lunch, so I'll try to keep it brief. I am a VP and Principal Analyst. I'm part of the global CMO team at Forrester, which is part of marketing and strategy research teams. So what I'll do in the next 15 minutes is to share with you a marketing and business perspective, sharing some of the trends we expect to impact CIOs and CTOs. I'm really glad to be back here in Amsterdam. Last time I was here was pre-COVID, was on November 27, 2019. How do I remember the day? Well, it's pretty easy. It was my birthday. And what happened that day, I was flying on KLM, and I was very surprised when the flight attendant came to me and said, "Are you Mr. Thomas Husson?" I said, "Yes." And she said, "Well, happy birthday." And she gave me a nice handwritten card and a half bottle of champagne. And I was obviously surprised and delighted, which is what marketers try to do when they engage their customers, to generate positive emotion, because emotion is the key driver and differentiator of customer experiences. And I started to discuss with the flight attendant, and I asked her, "Do you do this systematically when consumers are traveling the day of their birthday?" And she said, "Yes, this is part of a ritual we have because obviously we know your birthday date." And she mentioned to me, "This is what motivates me in my job." And I realized, and we know this from our research, that motivation is one of the key driver of employee engagement, one of the key ways to engage employees. And when you step back, actually, these two terms have the exact same etymology, the same origin. They come from Latin movere. And this is really what, at the end of the day, I think part of the CIO job is all about, making sure that you enable employees, you empower them to deliver more personalized customer experiences. This is what marketers strive to do. And at the end of the day, the correlation between employee and customer experience has increased during the COVID. And this is really absolutely key to enable people to have the right tools to deliver these kind of experiences. So that was 2 years ago. And since then, our data shows that this correlation has drastically increased. But things have changed, obviously, and consumers as employees think meaning. They are more focused on values. Personally, I have realized the importance of sustainability. So I no longer fly to Amsterdam because I'm based in Paris. So I take the Thalys train. And it is really important. As you've seen earlier from some of the data KPMG shared in the joint survey we conducted with them, sustainability is increasingly a key priority. It is actually one of the key disrupting factors from a survey we conducted last month for CEOs. Because at the end of the day, ESG and sustainability is the next wave of business disruption and transformation. And to deliver on this, you've got to minimize and reduce the gap between branding, customer, and employee experiences. Some firms are better than others doing this. A good example would be the group Yves Rocher, the cosmetic brand. They have 5 other brands. They're striving to become a B Corp by 2025. And they've evolved their purpose, reconnect people to nature. This is absolutely key. But you're going to tell me, yes, but how do marketers enable this? Who do they enable these kind of experiences? And because they have a lot of challenges. I know Francois from BCG earlier talked a lot about the new cases, the new business cases and the business value of AI. But when you ask marketers about their pain points, well, it's first and foremost getting the right data, and this is increasingly complex in the cookie-less world we're heading to, turn this data into insights and personalize experiences. And the vast majority of marketers, and I would argue the vast majority of firms, are not at a stage where they can scale AI because they have this big first issue of managing data quality across silos. So whatever you guys can do as CIOs and CTOs to enable this sharing of data and to manage these data quality issues that marketers face is going to be super helpful. Then the question is, once you've done that and you've personalized experiences, how do you showcase the value so that marketing, and I would argue IT as well, is no longer a cost center, but is a profit center? And so it's about demonstrating the value of customer experience. And the way we measure this at Forrester is by looking beyond effectiveness and use, but really measuring emotions. As I've mentioned earlier, emotion is the key driver in B2C and in B2B of personalized customer experiences. And then it's linking this not just to advocacy or an NPS score, but it is about retention. It's about retaining acquiring customers that you can retain, and linking this to their loyalty, to your ability to upsell and cross-sell services. And once you've got this aggregated metrics, whether it's your own CX index score, whether it's NPS, whether it's customer lifetime value, you need to link this to business and operational KPIs that you use in your organization, whether it's churn, whether it's cost reduction, whether it's profitability. That's the way to showcase and get more funding for more tools, for VOC tools, for voice of the employee tools, for connecting the dots between different information systems. But it's difficult to do because you need to speak the same language than your counterparts, the CMOs and the business leaders. And this is one of the key challenges we see at organizations, because more often than not, it is CIOs and CTOs who have led digital transformation, both from a strategy, but also from an execution standpoint. And more often than not, CMOs do not necessarily have a seat at the digital transformation table, for a number of reasons, one of them being that they are the less tenured in the C-suite. But things have hopefully evolved and improved over the past 2 years, primarily, I would argue, because of the pandemic, because you've been forced to work together, and this has definitely improved the relationship. We see more and more marketing organizations have a dedicated MarTech organization and dedicated technology experts in their own teams. And yes, they're spending more on technology. Between 20 and 25% of their budget is dedicated to technology. Having said that, and we've heard before from other speakers about this is this notion of putting the clients at the center of everything. And we have this mantra at Forrester around customer obsession. And we've proved, yes, that customer-obsessed firms grow 2 times faster than others, and that they usually have a different kind of CIO, CMO leadership model. But there are very few firms that are good at it. In fact, less than 10%, 8% to be very specific, of firms are customer-obsessed. And the way they are is usually by having a different ways of working between marketing and IT people. And they have a shared business agenda, goals and metrics. I sat down yesterday we had lunch with 20 of our best clients in France. They were CIOs from different brands. And I asked them, do you have a joint KPIs? Do you have a customer-centric KPI? And they rarely acknowledge the fact that they shared the same KPI, that they were measured the same way, which is obviously an issue. And then I think it's also about putting in place formal governance. McDonald's was really good at this. It's about also informal meetings, team building, training. More often than not, you guys don't speak the same language than your counterparts. If I ask what DR stands for, most tech people tend to say, oh, you mean disaster recovery? And marketers will think direct response. This is a completely different language. And so it's really important to develop these informal relationships, to do training, to do, for example, joint recruitment, to acquire the data, the developers, the designers that you both need in your respective teams. And that's why we see IT transforms at the pace of business transformation. This is data from our latest IT maturity model. And surprisingly, or it's not surprising to me, actually there is a direct correlation. This is the exact same numbers. 8% of firms are future fit, meaning they're adaptive, they're creative, they're resilient, and they've developed this business-centric approach on top of modern IT. Meaning, yes, they are cloud first, they are platform first, yes, they use APIs, yes, they use agile, DevOps, and all the kind of stuff you guys do increasingly. But there are very few firms at this stage. And to me, this is not just a correlation. There is direct causality between these two elements. And so one answer could be, okay, let's blend together business and tech responsibilities under one leader. Increasingly, firms do this. Rexel does this, Club Med does this. As you see here, the quote from Quentin Briard, who is CEO of Marketing, Digital, and Technology at Club Med. That's all great, but it's not easy to replicate. There is no one silver bullet, because for a large organization, it doesn't make sense, and because it does not happen overnight. So it's about, I think, not focusing on the org chart, but more importantly, orchestrating skills. You guys and the CMO must act as conductors to orchestrate these skills across the organizations and find new ways to work together, because you're not going to change the organization from scratch. So it's about identifying new projects where you can play a role. And I think there are 4 main areas where you can change the way you collaborate. The first one is by focusing on hybrid commerce to drive growth. We've all seen with the pandemic that our behaviors have evolved. We want to have access in real time to stock information, to availability of products from our smartphones, whether we're in store or at home. We want to book appointments, and we don't care about this online-offline divide that was created. And there are firms that are really good at executing this. Nike is a good example of that, and they sell already 35% of their sales through digital channels. They're really good at personalizing experiences. The second element is on, I would argue, the consumer tech stack. Marketers struggle in assembling a right MarTech stack, and they struggle to get data. But what matters is to start from the consumer. What you and I use as apps, chatbots, website, the way we interact, the different kind of interfaces, based on the context in which we interact with a brand. And so that's definitely an area where you guys can collaborate in this era of data deprecation that is looming. Third one, and this has been mentioned earlier, so I'm not going to come back on this, accelerate innovation by using a new operating model. It is really important in the challenges that we face to be more creative. And creativity is not just the remit of the marketer or the agency or the founder and the visionary leader. Anyone can be creative as long as you empower people and have the right mindset to do this. And last but not least, embrace ESG as a catalyst for enterprise transformation. There's so many opportunities in the IT space, whether it's IT for green, green IT, open APIs to start measuring carbon emissions throughout the supply chain, to really think about ESG not as a, let's say, a compliance stuff, but really as an opportunity to enter adjacent markets and to innovate. Schneider Electric is another good example of a company that is really ahead of the curve and thinking of ESG as a business value. It's also one way to acquire and retain the talents that you need, the data scientists, the data engineers, the designers, the developers. So just to wrap up here, because I know I have 1 minute left before the gong, I want to leave you with 3 key messages. First, try as much as you can to overcome the CMO-CIO relationship paradox. It's a paradox because everyone knows that it delivers better results, but at the end of the day, there are very few firms where there is a good synergy and a good pair of not just CMO and CIOs, but at the end of the day, technology and marketing teams working well together. To do this, identify new ways to partner. It's not about changing the organization. It is about finding the 4 steps that I've mentioned to accelerate this new partnership. And last but not least, I'm going to echo what what other speakers have mentioned: invest in trust and embody change as a leader in your organization to reduce the gap between brand, customer, and employee experiences. Thank you very much for your